In today's video, I want to seriously consider this crazy idea that Bitcoin will reach $1 million a coin by 2030. And this isn't even my idea. One of the world's most respected hedge fund managers, Cathie Wood, believes that this will happen. Billionaire co-founder of PayPal, Peter Thiel, agrees with her. There are so many others, billionaires like Elon Musk, Jack Dorsey, Mike Novogratz, the Winklevoss twins, who all believe this crazy theory is possible. Now, before you laugh this idea off and say, not gonna happen, let me share with you some data, some facts, and statistics that supports this theory, because the idea of the $1 million Bitcoin is based on another idea, which is scarcity. Now, there's only ever supposed to be 21 million Bitcoins in all of existence, but it will take us another 118 years before we mine all the Bitcoins and before all 21 million actually exist. That will take us to the year 2140. But as of today, over 90% of Bitcoin's entire supply already exists. It will take us over a century to get access to just the other 10%. But here's what's crazier. If all the world's millionaires decided to buy just one Bitcoin, they wouldn't be able to because there's not enough to go around. According to Credit Suisse, as of 2020, there are roughly 56 million millionaires around the world, which means each millionaire would only be able to buy a little over a third of a Bitcoin, which is technically wrong because as of today, there's more millionaires, and more importantly, roughly 20% of Bitcoin's entire supply has been lost forever. Something like 4 million Bitcoins will never be recovered, which means the real supply of Bitcoin is closer to 17 million, which makes it that much more scarce. So in today's video, I want to talk about some of these facts and data points that support this crazy theory of the $1 million Bitcoin by 2030. I'm excited. Let's get right into it. Hi, my name is Andre Jick. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the crypto. So right now, Bitcoin is worth about $42,000 and its market cap about $800 billion. Here's what it's gonna take for us to get to $1 million Bitcoin. We would need to 25 times our investment, and the market cap at that point would be worth closer to $20 trillion, which is an insane amount of money. Just for reference, here's what $1 billion looks like next to a couch and a group of people. That's a lot of money, but it's not a trillion. Here's what $1 trillion looks like next to the White House and a football field. It's also a pretty accurate representation of how much Bitcoin is worth today, rounding up. But that's not 20 trillion. We need to get to 20. And incidentally, here's what $20 trillion looks like next to the Statue of Liberty and skyscrapers full of money. That is an insane amount of money. Credit to Visual Capitalist for the reference, but to go from this to that in just 8 short years seems pretty impossible. But now let me share with you some data about how it might actually happen. The first thing we have to talk about is how much money it actually takes to move the price of Bitcoin, because the idea of the $1 million Bitcoin is flawed if we're looking at it through the lens of market caps like I used to, and I know so many people do. Because even though a market cap is supposed to tell us how much money is in the entire system, it doesn't, and it's kind of confusing. All a market cap does is it takes the current supply of something and multiplies it by the current price, which is the last known sale price. That's all it does. For example, right now, Bitcoin's market cap is roughly $800 billion. It does not mean, though, that $800 billion worth is inside of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And if Bitcoin goes to zero tomorrow, it does not mean that investors will lose $800 billion worth of value. All it's doing is taking Bitcoin's current price of $42,700 and multiplying it by the current supply outstanding, which is 19 million coins, to get the implied value of $800 billion. The implication, though, is that if you were to sell all 19 million at $42,700, you would get $800 billion, which you wouldn't, because if you were to sell all of it, you would affect the price on the way down. That's why Bitcoin's value is not its price or its market cap. A perfect example of this is the stock market. Apple's market cap right now is $2.78 trillion. And the way this number is generated is it's taking all of the stocks that are available in total and multiplying them by the current price of Apple to get $2.78 trillion, but it does not mean that Apple has $2.78 trillion worth of stuff. There's also the price to earnings ratio, right? Which Apple's right now is over 28, which means investors are paying over 28 times the price of what it's earning per year for the opportunity of investing in Apple because they expect Apple to grow and make more money in the future. It's crazy misleading how this works, but I guess it's kind of like a good magic trick where you see how I'm showing you all these cards right here? Watch. Sometimes less is actually more. That's not a good magic trick, but you get the idea. Right now, you can technically start a $1 billion company with just $1. All it takes is for you to create a company with 1 billion shares outstanding and sell 1 share to someone else for $1, and that would give you the implied value of a $1 billion company. Now, Bitcoin does not have a PE ratio because it's not a stock and it's not a company, but the logic is very close, and you don't need as much money as you think to move its price. And the best evidence of this was on December 20, 2020. It all started when Tesla bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. It was then on December 20, 2020 when Elon Musk asked Michael Saylor if it was even possible to buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. And that's when people started to buy the rumor that maybe Elon was getting into Bitcoin. That's when I knew the price would skyrocket, which is exactly what ended up happening. In Q4 of 2020, that's when Tesla and Elon bought Bitcoin, but the world didn't officially know about it until the SEC filing, which was February 8th, 2021. And check out what happened to the price. Bitcoin opened the day of the tweet at $23,000, but by the time it was officially announced on February 8th, Bitcoin was up to $48,000. It more than doubled. So in the span of a little over a month, did people really spend over $430 billion on Bitcoin to double its price? There is no way that happened. The real dollar amount was a lot lower, and to figure it out would be impossible without knowing each and every single transaction, but theoretically, it would be as little as 10 to 20% of its market cap, which means instead of needing $20 trillion, we might only need $2 to $4 trillion in inflows to make $1 million Bitcoin possible. Now, as of right now, that averages out to 96 months in the next 8 years, which would break that down to $21 billion a month, which is still a lot of money, but it's a lot more doable than what we had before. And just for comparison, right now, we are inflowing about $2 billion a month, and that's being very favorable to Bitcoin, which means we are off by a factor of 10. So that means it's gonna be pretty impossible to get to that point in the next 8 years. Or will it? There are some catalysts that might make it happen. Please keep in mind that some of these are completely subjective, but they're relatively conservative in relation to what they are. But within the next 8 years, Bitcoin will either completely disrupt or play at least a conservative role inside of these 8 major markets. Credits to Yassine on Twitter for this one, and the first is the remittance market. This is where we send money from one country to another like we did to help Ukraine. This is slow, it's expensive, it's closed on weekends, and Bitcoin is undeniably the better system than we have today. If Bitcoin can capture 50% of the remittance market, that would add roughly $300 billion to its market cap, or $14,000 a coin. Number 2 is a big one. This is the emerging market currencies. This is referring to what's called the M2 supply of money. This is all things like cash, physical coins, checking, savings accounts. In other words, money that is easy to convert. And the emerging part is referring to countries that are transitioning from development to modernization. A good example is the Chinese renminbi, the Russian ruble, the Brazilian real, the Indian rupee, things like that. This is where Bitcoin could be a good proposition for store of value. Now, if Bitcoin can capture 10% of the global market here, this would add $2.8 trillion, or roughly $133,000 a coin to the value of Bitcoin, and that's excluding the top 4 countries of emerging currencies. The third is the economic settlement network. This is where banks send money to each other, and all of this happens digitally, but at some point, they'll want to settle in a final currency, which is usually the dollar, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a digital currency like Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin could capture just 25% of the market share here, that would add $3.8 trillion or $181,000 a coin. A fourth market is nation-state treasury, and you can think of this as the cash reserves of a country or like its little emergency fund. And if Bitcoin can capture just 1% of the global market here, that would add another $3.8 trillion or $181,000 a coin. A fifth catalyst is HNWIs, high net worth individuals. If those people held 5% of their assets in Bitcoin, that would add another $4 trillion to the market cap, or roughly $190,000 a coin. A sixth catalyst is institutional investment. These are people like BlackRock. And if only 2.5% of their assets were held in Bitcoin, that would add another $4.1 trillion to the market cap, or roughly $196,000 a coin. A seventh market is corporate treasury bonds. This is where companies raise capital by creating some debt, and if only 5% of their money was held in Bitcoin here, that would add $4.2 trillion to the market cap, or roughly $200,000 to the value of Bitcoin. And finally, 8, that would be gold. If Bitcoin can reach half of gold's market cap at $5.5 trillion, that would add $260,000 to the value of Bitcoin. Now, obviously, a lot of this is very subjective, and we can play with the math and spin the numbers however we want, but we could probably both agree that this is relatively conservative. It's not assuming that Bitcoin is going to take over the world. But altogether, the grand total market cap would be $28.5 trillion, which would imply a Bitcoin price of $1.36 million. Some people say $28.5 trillion is just impossible because it is too big. But to put that in perspective for you, that is still way less than the global value of the equity market. That's the stock market, which is valued at $106 trillion. That would still be much less than the global supply of M2 money, which is $123 trillion. That is still way less than the global value of the bond market, which is $124 trillion. And that is still almost 10 times less than the global value of real estate at $220 trillion. So suddenly, when you put it in that perspective, $28.5 trillion doesn't sound all that impossible, especially over the next 8 years. So the next question is, should you buy Bitcoin before it hits $1 million? And the answer is absolutely not. Bitcoin is obviously a bubble. According to 3 and 4 professional investors from a Bank of America survey, the guys from the Big Short movie think Bitcoin is a bubble. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger think Bitcoin is a bubble, but all of those are just their opinions, and they're not giving us any data. Instead, here's some actual useful data to help you figure that out. It's called the Mayer multiple, and it tells you Bitcoin's historical price in relation to its 200-day moving average. It doesn't tell you when to buy or when to sell, it just gives you some historical context. And right now, it's making a pretty good case for buying Bitcoin, because anytime the Mayer multiple was below 2.4, that's when, historically, it's been a good time to buy. Anything above that is expensive. Now, as of right now, at the current price of $42,700, the Mayer multiple is 0.89, so it's approaching 1. Historically, Bitcoin's average has been 1.41, and it's been higher than today's Mayer multiple 76% of the time. So as of right now, we're in that rare period of time where Bitcoin is below its historical average, which doesn't mean you should go to buy it, but it does mean if you believe Bitcoin will reach $1 million someday, now might be a good time to start dollar cost averaging. Which is kind of crazy to think about, that people in 2017 were upset about buying Bitcoin at $20,000 when now it's sitting in the 40s. I feel like now we all wish we could buy Bitcoin at $20,000, and I think that's going to continue to be true with each and every cycle. And by 2030, I don't believe that Bitcoin is going to replace banking. It's not going to replace the dollar, and it will not replace gold. And it doesn't have to. All it needs is a little market share from a couple different industries, which is exactly what's happening right now to get us to $1 million. Everything is going exactly as it was planned. I don't know whose plan it was, but I like the plan. Let's stick with it. As always, have a wonderful rest of your day. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Go grab up to $250 worth of free Bitcoin right here. Go grab your free stocks, links are down below, and then go track them automatically with the spreadsheet linked down below in my Patreon. Love you, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you back here on Monday and Friday, sometimes on Wednesday. Bye-bye.